look, you can't talk about anything we do here. You can't talk about anything to your spouse, to your friend, to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Because forget about losing your job. We're going to prosecute you if you do. It's not just you're going to get fired. No, we're going to sue you.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security, Security Confidential. Today is a very special episode for us. It is episode number 150. We've been at this for several years now. And we have an honest to God celebrity on the show. Robert Kerbeck is here to join us. He is, for those of you who don't know, and I think many of you do know who he might be, he is a former corporate spy. He is an actor. He is an acclaimed author. He is the founder of the Malibu Writers Circle. I don't know how he finds the time to do all these things, but he's written the book Malibu Burning, and his latest memoir is RUSE, Lying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street. And it offers a great insight into corporate spycraft. Robert, thank you for joining us today on this wonderful episode. Appreciate you being a title guest here.
Well, thank you for having me, and congratulations on the achievement. That's pretty impressive. I mean, in this day and age, there are a lot of podcasts that come and go. So to get to do 150 shows, congratulations.
Hey, thank you, Robert. Thank you. You know, you have a heck of a background. I mean, you have worked with the likes of Paul Newman. You've waited tables, and you have been amazingly successful in the corporate spy world as well. I mean, these are all such eclectic things. How did you get into spycraft? And why not stick to acting? I guess that's the question. Well, what gives?
Well, as a young guy, my hometown is Philadelphia, and my family is very well known in the automobile business. So if you're looking for a deal on a Maserati, tell them I sent you. My great-grandfather sold horse carriages before automobiles were invented. He became one of the first car dealers in Philadelphia. My grandfather took over the dealership. My father took it over, and I was supposed to take it over. But I fell in love with acting in college. Wanted to move to New York to become an actor. And of course, as you mentioned, actors need survival jobs, bartending or waiting tables, who stumbles into corporate espionage? But that's what happened to me. One of the only people I knew when I moved to New York was a friend. One day he mentioned this job he had, and then he shut up right away. Like he had been told, don't tell anybody about this job. Don't talk about this job. And when he kind of slipped, I said, whoa, what is this job? I'm broke. I need a job. Help me out. And so he very reluctantly got me an interview with this woman. And I went to her apartment, was on the Upper East Side, doorman building. She was in the penthouse. I go up there. She ushers me into the most beautiful apartment I've ever seen. And so right away, I knew whatever she did, it was lucrative. She was making a ton of money. And that was my foray into the world of corporate spying.
I got to ask you, what was that interview like? I mean, is there a resume for that? It's like,
yeah. Well, I think that was the thing that threw me off so much. First of all, she never asked for a resume. She never asked me really a single thing about my skills. She certainly never told me anything about the job. She just kept asking about my relationship with my father, and she was concerned, how was my father taking me leaving the family business? And, and I was like, is this a therapy session? What is going on here? And she sent me on my way, and I thought pretty much I had blown it because she never asked me or told me anything about the job. And my buddy called up and said, you're hired, but don't get too excited because no one is able to do this job. Because basically every actor in New York City was looking for a part-time job that you could do from home, make good money, and work it around your audition schedule. And so every actor was, seeing her ads in Backstage magazine and wherever else she had them. They would come They would try to do this job for oftentimes less than an hour, and then they would go, I can't do this. This is crazy. But she hired me. I think the next day or a couple days later, I went out to Brooklyn to begin training. She had this woman that trained us how to be spies. And I quickly began to learn that what we were tasked with doing was calling corporations, major corporations, using our acting skills to convince people inside the corporations to release sensitive, private, and extremely valuable information that this woman who ran the firm would then sell to their largest competitors.
Okay. That is quite a tall order. So you're going to call up somebody, or you're going to find a way to infiltrate an organization, get them to willingly give up valuable information. And you're not sitting at a computer being highly technical and hacking away at their systems, trying to find a vulnerability. You're finding the biggest vulnerability, which is their people themselves. So how the heck do you do it?
Yes. Well, I always tell people, I hack people. I don't need to hack your computers because I can hack your people. And by the way, many times once I've hacked the people, I can get them to tell me anything I want to know about your computers, about your network, about your systems, about your firewall, their passwords, because I've hacked the individual who believes I am with the company in a different location. I'm an executive. This is Gerhard calling from the office in Frankfurt, Germany. We have the European Union regulators here, and we need some information from the States. And people just like you're smiling and laughing. People would hear these accents that we would do, and they'd go, "Oh my God," and maybe they look you up and they go, "Oh, this guy Gerhard runs compliance for Europe, or he's the head of the legal department in Germany." Or if we were doing an Irish accent, "Oh, this guy works in London." And so they would believe that you were with the company, you were a senior person, and you had some sort of crisis, you had some sort of an emergency, and they needed to help you. And what are people taught in the corporate world? Be a good teammate, right?
That's right.
The importance of corporate culture, and so people would not only help you, they would want to help you. They would want to get you whatever information you needed, so much so that I would call people sometimes, and the people that I hacked would not have the information that I was after. And they would say, I know who has the information. Let me put you on hold. I'll go get it for you, and I'll come back and tell you what you need to know. So they would unwittingly become a spy for me within the company.
But wouldn't they come back and say, "Hey, Robert, you know what? Well," or Gerhard, by the way, your German accent's really good. That's pretty good. Wouldn't they say, "Gerhard, I'll email you," and they send the data to a corporate email?
Yes, of course, and yes, and look, this job was difficult. This job was not easy, and so many times people would say, "I need you to give me an email. You need to tell me your email and or email me what it is. I need an email, something to come from a corporate email because I cannot release this information over the phone." And so we had all kinds of ways we would try to work around that. But at a certain point, if I realized that you were not going with my story, my next job was we had a term for what we called put you to sleep. I had to put you to sleep because what I don't want is I don't want you calling other people in the company, emailing other people in the company and say, "Look, someone is fishing for secret information. Someone is fishing for information about this product or information about this deal or information about, our people," right? And so I don't want you to send that email out because I don't want anybody else to get warned. Like, okay, I might not get this information from you. So what I would say to you is I would say, "Oh, you want me to send you an email? Absolutely, no problem. I will send you an email. I will shoot it out to you. It'll have everything you want to know. It'll explain why this is an emergency." And then the person will go, "Oh, great. Okay, look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just need you to send me that email, and then I'll get you what you need." And I say, "Oh, no. You're doing the right thing. I'll have the email to you within an hour. Worst case scenario, because I got a couple other fires I got to put out, I'll have the email to you by the end of the day. Right. I have the
Okay.
email, and maybe if I get jammed up, but first thing in the morning, you will have that email from me. And they go, oh, okay, no problem. So what have I done? I've bought myself the rest of this day to get the information that my client wants, because now you're expecting an email to come later in the day, end of the day, first thing in the morning. And so now I have put you to sleep.
And likely that email is never going to come. If I'm going to play this story out, it doesn't show up. And if I'm probably not bothered, I continue my day next day. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Some guy Gerhardt called. He was supposed to send me. I don't know. It's not something I'm going to follow up on proactively. Typically.
No, I would say, I was going to say 9 out of 10. I would say 19 out of 20 people just forget about it and move on. And they don't, very rarely 1 out of 20 people would then follow up on that email and basically say, hey, somebody did, and then all of a sudden that ploy would sort of unravel. But at that point, I would have gotten the information from somebody else.
Makes sense. And, a few things here. So first of all, I would take it that your targets were much, much larger organizations where you had the safety of numbers in which to disappear.
Yes and no. You would be surprised. Smaller targets, of course, were often more challenging. I mean, obviously, if you're calling a huge tech company or you're calling a huge bank that has offices all over the world, you could be from anywhere. And of course, in this day and age, so many people are working from home. So we would track down and get people's cell phone numbers. So we would take them kind of, so they're like, oh, well, this person's got my cell phone number. They know all of this stuff about the company. They must be doing what they're doing. So it did make it a little easier. But smaller companies also, if there was a different office, and even if it was 75 people or 50 people in the firm, not everybody knows each other. And so we would do a lot of, look, this job was very research intensive. We would do a tremendous amount of research before we would pick up the phone and call anyone, because sometimes we only had one shot, one opportunity to get this information, and we could not blow it, right? So we would do a lot of homework. I would know if the sports teams in the town, the person I was calling, if they were in Cleveland, I would know, did the Browns win? Did the Cavaliers win? Was there a traffic accident? Was there some, local election the night before where people were I would know all of those things. And so I would say, oh my God, whatever to use to create that I am in with your company, I am in this office, if they're based, let's say the company was located in Cleveland, right? Whatever, all kinds of information that you're doing your homework so that you seem like the real deal.
Well, Cleveland's an easy one because the Browns don't win that much. And, they got a sports team problem. So you pick that's actually my hometown. I grew up there. So I'm like,
oh my gosh.
That's that.
See, now look, you can say I was either really lucky or you can say I did some research on you.
You actually did some research on me. I'm probably guessing. It's like, I'm going to hack this guy. And, we at Dark Rhino get these kinds of notes all the time, but they don't realize how, we're a pretty tight-knit group. We're not a huge organization. So, we have fun with it. And
Right.
When people send emails in or are asking for information, but I can see how, one thing that this really brings to mind, and it's something that we harp on all the time, Robert, and everyone listening. I mean, Robert is like giving you guys a great exemplification of this. Cybersecurity is not an IT problem. It is a business problem. It is a people problem. If you hack the person, it's irrelevant that your bank vault is made out of unobtainium with triple titanium coatings, because that person's going to open the vault and walk somebody right in the front door. And those controls just don't matter anymore. And we can't seem to get it through anybody's head. But Robert, do you Have you been able to get that through to people? Do they understand?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. It is shockingly difficult. Um, Corporations will spend millions and millions of dollars on their tech, on their IT, on the firewall, the encryption, the network, the server, the
Yeah.
architecture, all of that stuff. And you talk about a social engineering training conference or a social engineering training, education program or something, which, by the way, costs a minuscule fraction of what they're spending on this technology. And they look at you and they scratch their head. And now it's changing. It's changing because, we've had some, incredibly serious hacks, the MGM hack.
Yeah.
Where basically that hack was perpetrated, basically, a 10-minute social engineering phone call cost MGM tens of millions of dollars and extreme reputational damage, right? So firms are starting to go, oh, wait a second, if we don't train and educate, especially our more junior employees, our employees that are working in lower level positions, basically that is an opening for social engineers to get in. And of course, a lot of times now the ransomware attackers are using social engineering to begin that process to hack your system. They start with the human element. They learn whatever it is they want to learn, reset passwords, all of that stuff, and then it's too late because now they have so much information that your firm is in big trouble.
You're absolutely right. And we often say probably the most effective tool is the one you folks are not using, and that's your people. And if you had gotten them some insight, there's a lot of things that could be avoided or altogether eliminated by just raising awareness. You mentioned MGM. One of the largest private Bitcoin heists was done by a bunch of teenagers out of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
They got away with $16 million. These were teenagers, right? And they paid off a telecom rep $500-600 to say, hey, transfer this Mr. Billionaire SIM card to my phone. And you know what? That guy, whoever did it, didn't really care because they're probably making $15 an hour, $16 an hour. They're having a lousy day. In comes somebody and say, you know what? I'll slip you $500. Here's what I need you to do. And he's like, yeah, sure. Why not? I don't care. And then they changed his password because they had MFA, and they wired themselves a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
Now they got caught.
Well, that's why Steve. Yes, well, yeah, of course, but they were teenagers too. I mean, they're really smart, but they weren't well versed in they were just thinking about committing the crime. They weren't thinking about getting away with the crime. Those are two different things. But one of the things about Steve Jobs, there are a lot of things to admire about what he did with Apple, but he was one of the best in terms of corporate secrecy, right?
Really?
And the way he did that with Apple was he said, look, you can't talk about anything we do here. You can't talk about anything to your spouse, to your friend, to anybody, anywhere, anytime, because forget about prosecuting if you do that. Forget about losing your job. We're going to prosecute you if you do. It's not just you're going to get fired. No, we're going to sue you. And so he really put the fear of God into his employees so that it created a real culture of secrecy at Apple, which is why they've been able to do these product announcements that, for the most part, people are surprised by. They didn't know about, whereas so many other corporations, this stuff is out there, and I think that's something that corporations have to do a better job, is educating their people that it's not just you're going to lose your job. It's that if you cost us money, if you get us hacked, if you get us shut down in a ransomware attack, we're going to find a way to hold you responsible. Now, of course, if they're not training their people, they're not gonna win that case in court, because the first thing that a good judge is going to say is, well, wait a second, you're suing this 27-year-old customer service rep because they reset a password. Did you ever train them about social engineering? Da da da. Did you ever have a seminar where you said these kind of things can happen? And they have not. So they're not going to be able to do that. But I think in a proactive corporation, these are the very simple, relatively inexpensive steps that can be taken to protect corporations' most sensitive information.
Yeah, absolutely. On your website, you, in I think it's one of your blogs, you tell the story of Zoe. I don't know which. Call in, and you're empathizing with her, and you ask her, how's it going? And in quotes, I think she answers, the cancer is back. So that's where your story starts. Now, my question is, why would a stranger share that information with you? Or what are you doing or what happens that you're developing that empathy or getting someone that level of comfort to share something so deeply personal at that point? And once they do that, then it's all over as far as I'm concerned. It's
right. Yeah. Well, look, the title of my book is obviously RUSE, right? And a ruse is, a trick. It's a ploy, right? And so we would have all of these different ploys we would utilize to gain people's trust. And so, I would be portraying myself as an executive in a different location, and maybe I'm in the compliance department and I've got to travel around meeting with state regulators all the time. And so, I'm calling people and today I'm in Austin meeting with the Texas regulators. Oh, tomorrow I'm in Harrisburg meeting with the Pennsylvania state regulators. Boy, this job is just so boring and tedious, and people begin to feel sorry for you, and they go, oh man, my job is boring and tedious too. And my boss is terrible. Oh, my boss is terrible. Right. And so now you're bonding with people and you're becoming telephone buddies, right? Telephone friends. And so when you develop these relationships, and your listeners are going to know this too. Your listeners are going to have relationships with people in their corporations that they may never have met. Maybe nowadays, of course, they've seen them on Zoom calls, but many, many relationships you have at work are with people that you've never physically met. And so, but are you close with those people? Yes, you are, because you're working with them, you're talking with them, you're dealing with them frequently. And so you develop a relationship so that people confide in you and they tell you secrets, and so I would get people telling me not only that they, in this case, that this poor woman had cancer. People would tell me about, employees sleeping with other employees. They would tell me about employees, including major executives that, got arrested, that were, had a drunk driving, like all of this incredible, salacious information that I didn't even ask for, because when you're friends with someone, what do people do? They gossip. And so I would be getting people telling me stuff that you just couldn't believe.
That's incredible. Now, before you mentioned that you guys did a lot of research if you're going to put up this ruse, and you're an actor too. Do you actually kind of get into the mind of the person that you're and take on that role? Because I'm not an actor, but I understand that actors often want to become the part, like actually take on the persona. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I would do Gerhardt, right, I would get in the mindset of this German guy who's trying to speak English. His English is pretty good, but he's got a thick accent. And so, my accent, forgive me if you, I know it's difficult for you to understand me. Forgive me. My German accent, but my English is it's okay. And they, oh no, Gerhardt, oh no, don't worry about it, honey. Your accent is, no, don't, I understand you. So here I am kind of throwing myself on their mercy, apologizing. And now they're, so it's creating this thing because I've now made myself a real person that is a little bit ashamed of how thick their accent is.
So you're absolutely taking on that persona.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
why? I mean, you're obviously really good at it. Why not? And you've been in the entertainment industry. Why not stick to acting then? Why put on a ruse and take on that? No pun intended. And we're going to talk more about that. But I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, like the simple fact is you could make a lot more. At least I could make a lot more money as a corporate spy. Acting, any artistic endeavor to make a living is nearly impossible, and to make big money is practically impossible. And I was a working actor. I did, 50 major TV shows. I did every TV show you could do in the 90s and early 2000s: NYPD Blue, ER, Chicago Hope, Star Trek, Sisters, Melrose Place. And even though I was working, doing lead roles on these shows, I was still just barely getting by. After taxes and a manager commission and agent commissions, um, it's just very difficult, unless you get a TV series that goes big. And unfortunately, I didn't get a TV series that went big. And so I always had the corporate spying in the background. When I first started doing the job in the early 90s, we were getting $8 an hour. And at the
Wow,
height of my spying, career, I was making $2 million a year.
that is a gig.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
real gig.
Yeah. 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 $2 million a year from home.
Well, you know what? That sounds like one of those late night infomercials to me, is what it is when you at 2 a.m. in the morning call my
Yeah.
number and I'll teach you how to make $2 million. But you actually did it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal amount of money. It's just mind boggling to me that I always, for those of us who are not in that business, you would think, you look at the likes of a Paul Newman or a Rob Lowe, or, I don't know, pick somebody, Leo DiCaprio. I mean, these people are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So you would think that there's more money than you can imagine in the industry, but it seems like to the select few go the spoils.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know what the statistics are today, but I think, I remember, sometime in the past that 95% of the members of the Screen Actors Guild, and to get into the Screen Actors Guild, you've got to have done some work as an actor. So 95% of the members of the union make less than $5,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see why.
And I've got a couple of actor friends, very well known, and they are, paycheck to paycheck. And, because as an actor, you get a job, you work for 2 months, then you're unemployed for 6 months. Then you get a job, you work for 3 months, then you're unemployed for 4 months, So, it seems like a lot of money maybe when you're getting those, but then you don't work for a while. And that's the challenge, with spying. There was more work than I could handle. I mean, I cannot tell you. One of the funniest things about publishing this book, RUSE, was how many companies reached out to me and said, Robert, we read your book and we want to hire you to spy for us.
That's
and
incredible.
I would say, I know. And I would say, you do know that I've outed myself as a spy now, that I can't really do it anymore.
And Robert, you mentioned Steve Jobs, but you also mentioned getting into defense contractors. Defense contractors use the same technique. They're saying you're going to go to jail if you violate the laws of the United States. What is it about the human condition why did Steve Jobs, why was he successful, and why was the defense contractor not successful, even though they had a bigger hammer than Steve Jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so in the book, one of the very first assignments that we did when I got hired for this job was to infiltrate defense contractors and find out who were the designers and developers of these top secret weapons programs. Now, I was getting that information not to sell to the Chinese or Russia. because if I had been doing that, I could have gone to jail for the rest of my life. Instead, we were getting that information and selling it to that firm's rivals so that they could then steal those employees and try to get that information so that they could help their bottom line and make more money. Which of course somehow that's okay, whereas the other version is not okay. But it was amazing to me that here are firms, and the people I was talking to had security clearance. They had been, vetted by the government, and here they are giving me this information over the phone. Who was in charge of the AWACS program? Who was doing these types of, submarine missile, all the programs back, and this is kind of after Reagan and Star Wars, so late 80s, early 90s, where there was this buildup in the defense industry, and so there was a lot of competition for talent, and that's something that oftentimes is overlooked in terms of corporate spying. Is one of the things that rival corporations are looking for is to identify who are the rock stars at their rivals and to steal those people away, often bringing with them their clients, their contracts, their secrets. And that's one of the big things we would get hired to do, because, LinkedIn, you think, oh, well, what would you need that for? Everybody's on LinkedIn. No, first of all, not everybody's on LinkedIn. And then even if somebody is on LinkedIn, LinkedIn doesn't tell you who the top performers are. And we would actually ascertain that information. So for example, if it was a sales team, we would get the rankings of the salespeople. We would get their revenue numbers, their sales numbers. So we would know who's number one on the sales team, who's number two, who's number three, who's number 37. Because when people come in and interview for another job with their rival, are they going to tell people that they're number 37 on the sales team?
No, they always make quota. They always exceed quota.
Exactly. And we would give our clients the proof. So if it was a sales team, if it was a trading team, if these were bankers, we would know the size of their book of business, anything that we could do. And of course, we would also know what people's salaries were and what their bonuses were, because, that's another great indicator, just like a pitcher's ERA tells you if they're a good pitcher or not a good pitcher. When we are able to say this person's making this money and this person's making that money, the corporation is paying them more because they value them more, and so we would have all of this information, which it would enable our clients to steal only the best and the brightest from their rivals.
Robert, when you were practicing this craft, where did the law sit in all of this? I mean, I realize you're not putting a gun to anybody's head. You're not forcing them to do anything. This is all voluntary data, but this seems like ethically or issue. I mean, there's no legalities associated with this craft whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it's certainly illegal. Back in the day when we were first doing this, we were concerned, we were just actors trying to make a living. And like I said, in the beginning, we were getting, $8 an hour or something. So we certainly didn't want to go to jail for $8 an hour. And so we hired an attorney, and the attorney said to us, what you're doing is in the gray, the very dark gray. And they're just, because corporate spying is so secret and so hidden, and there are not many corporate spies in the world. I mean, you probably count them on one hand, certainly not more than two hands of the people that are really good at doing this. I know them. So there's not a lot of case law around corporate spying. Now there have been people that have been caught. There are examples. You are putting yourself at risk. You are putting yourself at risk. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody that might want to read RUSE or listen to it, because there's an audiobook of RUSE as well. But look, I had a number of really close calls that were, where I was being, chased by a lot of agencies with 3 letters in their names.
That was going to be my next question is, did you get a knock on the door in the middle of the night saying, hey, come work for us?
Well, it's funny that I never got that. And I really thought, I thought 2 things in my career of spying, 2 things I thought would happen that never did. One, I thought somebody like the FBI would say, we want you to come work for us, or we want you to at least help us, advise us, which I would love to do. And the other thing that never happened is I really thought at some point political campaigns would approach me and say, hey, you are able to find out anything about corporations, anything about employees of corporations, anything about their products, their pricing, their techniques, their, all of this stuff, their systems, their, everything. Can you do that for our political campaign about, the person we're running against? I was surprised that nobody ever approached me about that. Now, I don't know that I wanted to do that or I would have done that because, like I said, I always felt like, I wasn't stealing, people's credit card information or taking money from the elderly. And look, this is not to justify what I did because, I don't justify it. And in the book, I deal a lot with the moral and ethical implications of what I did. But still, the thing that I used to justify it was, look, we live in a capitalist system. And I'm getting information from one corporation and selling it to another corporation, and so that was kind of how I justified it.
Take us through RUSE without giving away all of its secrets. Whet our appetite a little bit about who is the intended audience, what was its intended purpose, and give us maybe some highlights that you could share without divulging everything.
Sure. Well, thank you. I wrote the book during COVID, which obviously was a very difficult time. And so I wanted to write a book that was fun. People tell me that RUSE reads like a spy novel, even though everything in it is true. I like to say that I've written a true book about lying. And the other thing about RUSE is it's kind of two books because it's obviously corporate spying, and that's kind of probably the main book. In Hollywood, when you talk about movies, the movie has an A story and a B story. The A story is kind of the main story, but then there's always this other story that's the B story, which is kind of cool too. It's not the main part of the movie, but it's a big part of the movie, right? So my book, the A story is corporate spying, but the B story is all of these interactions that I have acting with major celebrities, many of which are just incredible stories. And of course, I think probably the most memorable one is that I worked with O.J. Simpson the week before the infamous murders. And I had this crazy thing where I got hired to be in this exercise video with him, which of course was later subpoenaed in his trial, and had this strange experience where I was working with OJ, for a couple of days straight, and I witnessed a lot of disturbing behavior on the set, which I've written about in the book, and now I've been asked to, I've been interviewed about these scenes because in the moment people would say, "Did you know that he was capable of murdering, two people?" Well, in the moment, you're not thinking somebody's going to go and murder two people, but as soon as I found out, I went, "Oh my God, all of the signs were there that day on that exercise video set." So there are a lot of things like that in the book too, that kind of break up the spine with these just insane, true stories about interactions with very, very well-known people.
Give us another interaction with someone that you found memorable that sticks out in your psyche.
Well, I had this great conversation with Yoko Ono, and then I eventually had to hang up on her, which was pretty funny. I actually hung up on Yoko Ono. And then I had this incredible interaction with this actor that you probably never heard of named George Clooney, because I was hired to go on this TV show Sisters to kill his character. He was about to go to the show ER. His career wasn't doing very well. He was bemoaning that, he was 32 and he hadn't made it and his career was almost over. And the whole time I'm like, boy, this guy is a real sad sack, this George Clooney guy. I hope this ER show does something for him.
Well, your hope was you blessed the guy. It did.
Yeah, really I know. He got all the good luck right there,
Well, him and the fellow who played Goose in Top Gun. Anthony, I forget his name now.
Oh, Anthony Edwards. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
he
Anthony
was
Edwards. Yeah,
he was in ER as well, right? I mean, that was
yeah, yeah. He was. Yeah. Yeah, but it's just again, there's like one of the reviews said, there's a Forrest Gump quality to these interactions with these celebrities, because here I am on the set with George Clooney, and he is so depressed about the state of his acting career, and I think it's fascinating to see it, because of course he, months later became the most famous actor on the planet, and he was People's Magazine's Sexiest Man of the Year. And here, only a few months earlier, he was miserable. He thought his career was over. And it just goes to show you in life that, when you get that bump in the road, when you lose a job, when a relationship ends, you're down, you're depressed, understandably so, but you got to hang in there, because things can turn that quickly. Now, you're probably not going to get the George Clooney turn, but you can still get a new job, a better job, a new relationship, a better relationship.
that is very good advice, actually. I have I've met successful CEOs, many well-known CEOs, but I have not met a star actor like that, or someone that is like George Clooney is a name you could probably go to any part of the world and they'll know who the heck George Clooney is, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that, this is a personal question, that that kind of success, those people are happy? Does it bring happiness?
That's a great question. That's a great question. You know, I think on the surface, because we live in this world of social media, and we see a lot of stuff on social media that we can look at and maybe get a little depressed and go, boy, this person's got this great life, but we also, in the back of our minds, know that much of this is fake, that much of this is not the case. And so that was the thing that OJ experiences. Here I am on the set with OJ, and, he was a good looking guy, and he was, charismatic, and yet behind the scenes, he was miserable, and he was, abusing his, Nicole Brown Simpson, and his children, and his children were impacted, and it was just just a terrible, terrible situation, right? And obviously incredibly tragic. But you wouldn't have known that, from the image that he was giving off those days when I was working with him.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's important for people, and especially young people, is that when you see stuff on social media, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because I think certainly more than half of it is not true. And that's not to say it's completely fake. It's just it's like a rose-colored glasses view of someone's life.
Which leads me to the next question again, a little more on the personal side here, but you understand human beings probably as good as anybody on the planet, and understand motivations, what drives them. What has been the most astonishing insight you've gotten about the human condition? What are people looking for? What drives them? What's the missing in their lives that you come in and you're able to, they want to share? It sounds like it. I mean, I'm just curious, what is it? What is it about the human condition that?
Yeah, I mean, people want to connect with each other. I mean, again, going back to social media, people want to connect with you on Facebook. They want to connect with you on LinkedIn. They want to connect with you. And of course, the people that created LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all of the other platforms, they have recognized that people want connection, that would be, that was what, we spies were basically, utilizing to our advantage, is that, I would oftentimes, when I was taking on a persona or a character, I would choose to be a senior level executive at a corporation, because people want to be connected to the senior level executive, because they're like, boy, this is going to be good if I help out Gerhard, the senior vice president of compliance in Europe, boy, that's going to be good for my career because now I got a friend who's a senior vice president of compliance. Boy, he reports to the COO who reports to the CEO. I'm only one step away from the CEO with my relationship with Gerhard. My God, this is going to be good for me. So I'm going to help Gerhard with whatever he needs. And boy, at the end of the call, I'm going to say, hey, Gerhard, great talking to you. If you need anything else, call me anytime. And guess what? Now I've got a mole inside that company that every time I need information, I'm going to go to them first.
How big a role, respectively, does empathy and listening capability play in making the connection that you have just described?
Yeah, well, look, you think for the job to be a spy, the type of spying we were doing, that you have to be a great talker, right? And of course that's true, but you have to be an even better listener, right? And so I could hear in the silence on a phone call, I could hear what you were thinking. And I would be thinking about what you were objecting to, because my job is to satisfy your objections so that you give me the information, right? And so whatever your objection might be, I've got to figure out a way to satisfy it, because that's what I'm trying to do is get this information. And so that required really, I like to call it extreme listening.
And you talk about that in RUSE?
Yes, definitely.
If somebody wants a signed copy of that book, how do they go about getting it?
Oh, there are a couple of bookstores that have signed copies. One of them is Diesel Books, which is in Brentwood in Southern California. You can also go to my website, which is just my name, robertkerbeck.com. And you can email me directly from my site. I respond to everything. And so, if for some reason Diesel doesn't have one and you want one, email me and we'll figure out, we'll make it happen.
That's phenomenal.
And I also like to tell people, if you're looking to pivot into a new lucrative career as a corporate spy, read RUSE and then email me and I'll tell you how to do it.
Well, now
because I can't do it myself anymore.
See, you want to be careful about putting that out there because you don't want to get a whole bunch of people saying, heck yeah, man, I'm waiting tables. I need out. Calling it quits.
Well, I have had people reach out to me, and look, there is a ton of work for potential corporate spies because corporations want to know secrets about their rivals. Small corporations, medium-sized corporations, large corporations, public corporations, private corporations. Everybody wants to know what your rivals are doing. It's like the NFL. Everybody wants to know what the other teams are doing, who they're drafting, why they're drafting this person and not that person, why they're running these plays and not that plays, And so it's the same thing in the corporate world. So there is a lot of opportunity out there for people that want to go after it. So, if you read RUSE and you feel the calling, reach out to me and I'll give you a tip or two.
Is there anything else you would like to plug? I want to give you the floor for the next minute here.
Oh no, you've already been incredibly generous and kind. I mean, about the only other thing I'll say is RUSE is in development for a TV series, which is incredibly exciting. I don't have a date on it yet, but hopefully, where are we now? We're May 2024, so hopefully sometime in 2025 there'll be a TV series.
Fantastic. Well, Robert, thank you for being a phenomenal guest here and being guest number 150. And we couldn't have thought of anybody better. I mean, this is, you're talking about a topic that's very near and dear to all of us because social engineering is a huge thing. And it's something that you're daylighting. And for all of us in the cybersecurity industry, your story we should all be drawing lessons from it. And I'm grateful that you're willing to share some of this information. I think it'll help people.
Oh, I hope so. I do go to conferences and speak and consult for corporations. And basically, I've gone from, offense to defense. And now I try to help firms protect their information. And I think it's important, especially now in this incredibly intense world with these virulent ransomware attacks that can, shut a company down and cost companies tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars.
You're absolutely right. And for our audience, folks, Robert's opened the door. Feel free, he's opened the door. You can reach out to him. Please do.